Ever wondered how often you lie to yourself without even realizing it? It's an unsettling thought, isn't it? But it happens more often than we'd like to admit. This self-deception, this unspoken narrative, often manifests through our assumptions. Assumptions. They're the invisible threads that weave together the fabric of our understanding. Essentially, they are mental shortcuts. Our brains attempt to make sense of the world around us without expending too much energy. They help us to make quick decisions, to take rapid action. But here's the catch. These shortcuts, while convenient, often bypass the truth. Imagine you're in a dark room. You're trying to navigate your way around, but all you have to guide you are vague shapes and shadows. That's what it's like to make decisions based on assumptions. You're acting on incomplete information, on shadows, rather than on the full picture. This is where the self-deception comes in. We convince ourselves that these shadows, these half-truths, are the full reality. We allow these assumptions to shape our actions, our thoughts, our beliefs. And in doing so, we are effectively lying to ourselves. The irony is, it's often easier to detect when someone else is lying to us than it is to recognize our own self-deception. Why? Because it's difficult to challenge our own beliefs, to admit that we might be wrong. It's uncomfortable to confront the reality that our assumptions may be just that, assumptions, not truths. So what happens when we continually act on these assumptions? We end up locking ourselves into a prison of our own creation. A prison built not of bricks and bars, but of unchallenged assumptions and unquestioned beliefs. This is the unseen lie we tell ourselves. This is the prison of our own mind. Assumptions, while seemingly harmless, can become a prison of your own mind. The most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves, but remember, the key to freedom lies not in the depths of the ocean, but in our willingness to confront our assumptions, to seek out the truth, and to unlock the door to genuine understanding. Our brain is a pattern recognition machine. But what happens when it takes shortcuts? Within the intricate labyrinth of the human mind, there exists a powerful mechanism designed to streamline our decision-making process. This mechanism, known as the assumption, operates in the shadows of our conscious thought, silently dictating our perceptions, judgments, and actions. When we delve into the realm of psychological research, we find that our brains are hardwired to search for patterns, to simplify the complex world around us. In a sense, our brains are like detectives, constantly gathering clues and drawing conclusions. However, instead of painstakingly investigating every detail, our brains often opt for the path of least resistance. The mental shortcut, the assumption. Assumptions in their essence are not inherently harmful. They provide an efficient way to navigate our daily lives, allowing us to make quick decisions without the exhausting task of scrutinizing every fact. Imagine having to reevaluate the safety of crossing a street every time you reach a pedestrian crosswalk. Assumptions help to eliminate this cognitive burden, allowing our minds to focus on more pressing matters. But as with everything in life, there's a flip side. Assumptions can lead us astray, painting our reality with strokes of falsehood and distortion. They can trap us within the confines of our own misconceptions, preventing us from seeing the world as it truly is. While assumptions can help us make quick decisions, they can also lead us astray. And in that astray, we find ourselves caught in a web of self-deception, a prison of our own creation. The most dangerous lies are those we tell ourselves. Why? Well, it's because these lies, these assumptions, form an invisible prison around our minds. We become both the jailer and the jailed, locking ourselves into a world of misconceptions and misinterpretations. But unlike a physical prison, this mental confinement is not tangible. There are no visible bars, no tangible chains, yet its effects are profound and far-reaching. Assumptions, these self-deceptions, are barriers to genuine interaction and understanding. They distort our perception of reality, making us see what we want to see rather than what truly is. This is not to say that assumptions are inherently evil. They are, in fact, a natural function of our brain, helping us make quick decisions in a world overflowing with information. However, when left unchecked, they can lead us down a path of misunderstanding and miscommunication. Just think about it. When you act on an assumption, you're essentially gambling with the truth. You're betting that your perception of the situation, your interpretation of events, is the ultimate reality. But the truth is rarely so straightforward. It's multifaceted, complex, and often elusive. This is where the danger of self-deception lies. It's not just about being wrong. It's about the consequences of that wrongness. It's about the opportunities missed, the relationships strained, and the personal growth stunted. It's about the walls we build around ourselves, isolating us from the world and from our own potential. But here's the good news. Just as we are the jailers of our own minds, we also hold the keys to our liberation. We have the power to challenge our assumptions, to question our beliefs, to seek out the truth. It's not an easy task, and it requires a certain level of vulnerability and humility. But the rewards are well worth the effort. When we confront our assumptions, we open up a world of understanding and truth. We dismantle the walls of our mental prison, allowing us to engage with the world and with ourselves in a more meaningful and authentic way. We replace the lies with truth, the deception with understanding, and in doing so, we set ourselves free. Facing the reality that our assumptions may be wrong is uncomfortable. But why? There's something about admitting we're wrong that makes us squirm. It's as if our very worth is tied to always being right. But this mindset is a trap, a stifling cage that limits our growth and understanding. When we hold tightly to our assumptions, we're not just refusing to admit that we could be wrong. We're also rejecting the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to broaden our perspectives. It's an uncomfortable truth indeed, but it's one that we need to face if we want to break free from the prison of self-deception. Let's take a moment to think about vulnerability. It's often seen as a weakness, something to be avoided. But in reality, vulnerability is a strength. It's the courage to show up, to be seen, to admit that we don't have all the answers. It's the willingness to say, I was wrong, and I am open to learning. This willingness to change our minds, to shift our perspectives, and challenge our assumptions is not a sign of weakness. On the contrary, it's a sign of strength and maturity. It's a sign of someone who is open to growth, who values truth over ego, who understands that the quest for knowledge is a journey, not a destination. And yes, it's uncomfortable. It means stepping out of our comfort zones, confronting our biases, and facing the possibility that our worldview may need to adjust. But this discomfort is a small price to pay for the rewards that come with embracing the truth. Remember, the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves. When we choose to confront our assumptions, we not only stop lying to ourselves, but we also open up a world of understanding and genuine interaction. Truth is the foundation of trust, and trust is the cornerstone of any meaningful relationship, whether with others or with yourself. Facing the truth requires courage, vulnerability, and an open mind. It's a journey worth embarking on, a path that leads to self-discovery, growth, and authenticity. So, are you ready to take the first step? Making decisions based on assumptions is like locking yourself in a prison. How do we find the key? Imagine for a moment that you're trapped in a labyrinth of your own making, every turn leading you further into a maze of misconceptions. This is the prison of assumptions. But unlike a physical prison, this jail is not constructed of concrete and steel, but of thoughts and beliefs that may not be grounded in reality. So how do we break free from this self-imposed incarceration? The first step is to acknowledge that we're making assumptions. Recognize that the walls of this prison are not solid facts, but rather conjectures we've constructed. Next, we need to get curious. Just as a detective doesn't take things at face value, but digs deeper to uncover the truth, we too must question our assumptions. This curiosity is the chisel that can break down the walls of our mental prison. The third step is to ask questions. Questioning our assumptions forces us to confront them head on, to scrutinize them, to see if they hold up under examination. Each question is a key that can unlock a door in our labyrinth, leading us closer to the truth. The fourth step is to seek evidence. Just as a jury requires proof before passing judgment, we too must demand evidence to support our assumptions. This evidence is the light that can guide us out of our maze of misconceptions. Finally, we must be open to new findings. This can be the most difficult step, as it requires us to let go of our preconceived notions, our comfort zones. It requires us to be vulnerable, to admit that we might be wrong, but it's also the most liberating step. As we open ourselves up to new possibilities, we start to dismantle the prison of assumptions, brick by brick. By following these steps, we can break free from the prison of assumptions, escape the labyrinth of our own making, and step into the light of truth. To stop lying to ourselves, we must start by acknowledging our assumptions and being open to the possibility that we might be wrong. Truth is the foundation of trust, but how does it relate to our assumptions? Let's delve into this crucial topic. When we make assumptions, we create narratives based on our limited understanding or perspective. These narratives might seem real, but they are often far from the truth. They are fabrications of our mind, mental shortcuts that help us avoid the hard work of seeking out the real story. But here's the catch. These shortcuts can lead us astray, causing us to make decisions based on falsehoods. Now think about a time when someone lied to you. It likely didn't take long for you to figure out the deception. You sensed something wasn't quite right. Why? Because lies are inconsistent with reality. They stick out like a sore thumb. But what about when you lie to yourself? When you make decisions based on assumptions? It's much harder to detect, isn't it? Here's why. Your brain is wired to look for patterns and shortcuts. When you make an assumption, your brain sees it as a shortcut, a quick way to make a decision without the hard work of investigating the truth. This is where the power of truth comes in. Truth is consistent with reality. It's credible, it's reliable, it's the bedrock upon which we build trust and forge meaningful relationships. When we seek truth, we confront our assumptions. We challenge our mental shortcuts and force ourselves to delve deeper. Facing the reality that our assumptions may be wrong is uncomfortable. It means admitting we don't have all the answers. It requires vulnerability, but it also opens up a world of understanding and genuine interaction. So, how do we stop lying to ourselves? We start by acknowledging that we're making an assumption. We get curious, we ask questions, we seek out evidence, and most importantly, we remain open to what we might find. By doing this, we replace our assumptions with truth. We stop lying to ourselves. We create a foundation of trust, not just with others, but also within ourselves. And this trust is the cornerstone of any meaningful relationship. By confronting our assumptions, we not only stop lying to ourselves, but we also build trust and foster meaningful relationships. The journey towards self-truth is not easy, but it's worth it. As we've journeyed together through this exploration of assumptions and self-deception, we've uncovered some uncomfortable truths. Assumptions, those mental shortcuts our brains are wired to make, can lead us astray, locking us in a prison of our own creation. Yet, it's in the recognition of these unseen lies we tell ourselves that we begin to find the keys to our freedom. We've delved into the psychology of assumptions, understanding their allure and their danger. They offer quick decisions, but at the cost of genuine understanding. It's a cost too high for any of us to pay. And so, we've explored the uncomfortable truth that facing our assumptions means admitting we don't have all the answers. It requires vulnerability and a willingness to change our minds. But here's the good news. Breaking free from the prison of assumptions is possible. It starts with acknowledging that we're making an assumption. From there, we get curious, ask questions, seek out evidence, and most importantly, remain open to what we might find. This is the power of truth. It's the foundation of trust, the cornerstone of meaningful relationships, and the key to unlocking the prison of our minds. Remember, when we confront our assumptions, we open up a new world of understanding and genuine interaction. I'm gracious, and thank you for joining this journey towards self-truth. Often, we find that low self-esteem can be traced back to negative assumptions about ourselves. But how does this happen? Let's start with the first point. Our assumptions about our self-worth can be incredibly damaging. If we assume we're not good enough, not smart enough, not attractive enough, these negative assumptions become our reality. They fuel our low self-esteem, creating a cycle that's hard to break. Moving on to our second point, low self-esteem can lead to self-deception and a distorted self-image. We may start to see ourselves through a lens of negativity and doubt, always assuming the worst. This self-deception can be incredibly harmful, leading to feelings of worthlessness and even depression. But here's the hopeful part. Challenging these assumptions can boost self-esteem and promote self-acceptance. Instead of assuming the worst about ourselves, we can challenge these beliefs. We can ask ourselves, is this really true? Is there evidence to support this? Could there be another explanation? By questioning our assumptions, we can start to break down the prison walls of low self-esteem. In conclusion, by challenging our negative assumptions, we can boost our self-esteem and start to see ourselves in a more positive light. This isn't an overnight fix, but it's a journey worth taking. Remember, the power of truth can set us free, even from the assumptions we hold about ourselves. As we continue on this journey towards self-truth, let's keep challenging our assumptions and embracing the power of truth. Stay tuned for our next segment, where we'll dive deeper into strategies for challenging assumptions and embracing self-truth. Let's take a moment to explore another aspect of assumptions, their relationship with anxiety. It's not uncommon for our assumptions to fuel feelings of worry and anxiety. When we assume the worst, we often end up feeling anxious about the possible outcomes. For example, if we assume a friend is upset with us because they haven't replied to our text, we might start to worry and feel anxious. This anxiety can spiral, leading us to make even more negative assumptions. It's a vicious cycle, isn't it? But what's interesting is how anxiety can also distort our perception and lead us to make more negative assumptions. When we're anxious, our minds tend to jump to the worst-case scenario, leading us to make assumptions that aren't based in reality. For instance, if we're anxious about a work presentation, we might assume that we're going to mess up and our colleagues will think less of us. These assumptions, fueled by anxiety, can be incredibly damaging and distort our perception of reality. But here's the silver lining. Challenging our assumptions can help us reduce our anxiety and promote mental well-being. When we start to question our assumptions, we can begin to break free from the cycle of anxiety. We can ask ourselves, is this assumption based in reality? Is there evidence to support this? What's the worst that could actually happen? By challenging these assumptions, we can start to reduce our anxiety and promote a healthier mindset. In conclusion, assumptions and anxiety are closely linked. But by challenging our assumptions, we can start to reduce our anxiety and promote mental well-being. It's not an easy journey, but remember, the power of truth can set us free, even from the assumptions we hold about ourselves. Stay tuned as we continue our journey towards self-truth in our next segment. Let's dive deeper into another aspect of assumptions, how they can lead to mistruths. Assumptions, as we've learned, can distort our perception of reality. When we make assumptions, we're essentially filling in the gaps in our knowledge with our own beliefs and biases. This, unfortunately, can lead us to believe things that aren't necessarily true. For instance, if we assume that someone is angry with us because they haven't returned our calls, we're creating a narrative in our mind that may not be based on truth. This mistruth can further fuel our assumptions, creating a vicious cycle. It's like looking at the world through a distorted lens. The assumptions we make can color our perception, leading us to see things not as they are, but as we believe or fear they might be. This can lead to misunderstandings, miscommunications, and even conflicts. But here's the good news. Just as we have the power to create these assumptions, we also have the power to challenge them. We can question our assumptions, seek out the truth, and adjust our perceptions accordingly. This process of challenging our assumptions can help us see the world more clearly, free from the distortions of mistruths. By challenging our assumptions, we can break free from the cycle of mistruths and see the world as it truly is. It's not an easy task, but the journey towards self-truth is a rewarding one. So, let's continue to challenge our assumptions, seek the truth, and strive for a healthier, more truthful mindset. Stay tuned for our next segment, where we'll explore more ways to break free from the prison of assumptions. Our journey continues as we explore another consequence of assumptions: impulse decisions. The connection might not be immediately apparent, but let's delve deeper. When we make assumptions, we often fill in the gaps with our own beliefs, as we've discussed earlier. This can lead us to make decisions based on incomplete or inaccurate information. In other words, we can make hasty, impulsive decisions. For instance, if we assume that a particular investment is guaranteed to give us quick returns, we might impulsively put all our money into it without doing thorough research. Similarly, if we assume that a friend's silence means they are upset with us, we might impulsively confront them, leading to unnecessary conflict. Impulse decisions, in turn, can further reinforce our assumptions. If our hasty decision leads to a negative outcome, we may assume that our initial assumption was correct, leading to more hasty decisions in the future. It's a cycle that can be difficult to break, but not impossible. Challenging these assumptions can lead to more thoughtful and informed decisions. By questioning our assumptions before we act on them, we can ensure that our decisions are based on facts, not just our beliefs or fears. This can help us avoid the pitfalls of impulsivity and make decisions that are in our best interest. In the next segment, we will delve deeper into how we can challenge our assumptions and break this cycle. For now, remember this: by challenging our assumptions, we can make more thoughtful decisions, avoid the pitfalls of impulsivity, and lead a more fulfilling life. Stay tuned.